right, hello everyone, and welcome to another chat with Barnes and Noble. Today, I am here with Kwame Mbalia. Kwame, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me. I'm incredibly excited to get talking with you.
Awesome. So we're gonna talk about Jax Freeman and the Phantom Shriek. So I want to start with just asking you where the idea for this came from, and once you had that idea, how did you build it out from there?
Oh boy. All of my ideas really start as like um what ifs, what if scenarios, right? And so at the time I was really fascinated with this period in American history called the Great Migration, where African Americans moved from the South, primarily to the North, but also out West, um, in search of better opportunities, for better job opportunities and so on and so forth. And so a major way they did that is by train. And since I'm a very speculative person, I love magic, I love science fiction, I love fantasy, right? I'm like, what? I just had this idea of like wizards, magic users on trains heading to some new destination. Um, and learning doesn't stop, no matter where you are. And so I had this image of, someone teaching young magic users while they were on a train, right? And if you read Jax Freeman and the Phantom Shriek, if you look at the cover, you know that trains figure very heavily into the story. Um, and so that it really spiraled out from there. It snowballed out from there, from this kernel of an idea of people wielding magic on a train and learning how to control it and to use it.
And I love that idea of like this was an idea that just kind of sat with you because I'm always curious, especially with authors who write a lot, like you get ideas all the time. So why did this idea stick with you? And did it stay with you for a while before you started writing it?
Listen, my agent is very used to the 1 a.m., 2 a.m. texts where I'm like, listen, this story idea, blah 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 blah, right? Um, and so Jax happened a lot like that, and I think um it might sound really silly, or for people who write for a living, it might not sound silly. I commit to things that people are like, yeah, I want to read that. And by people, I mean the publishing industry, right? And so we pitched it to our editors at Disney, who I'd worked with for Tristan Strong Punches a Hole in the Sky. And they loved it. They loved the idea. They were like, yeah, let's do it. And so once I get the backing of someone who's going to be like, hey, we're going to buy your book, I'm like, I'm going to commit to that book then, because I get idea, young when I'm doing school visits, young writers and young readers will ask me all the time, well, where do your ideas come from? How do you get your ideas? And I'm like, listen, I need to stop getting ideas, right? My brain is so active in storytelling and imagination. Like I wouldn't get in trouble, but at parent teaching conferences, the teachers would be like, Kwame's daydreaming again. He does his work, but we would love it if he would pay attention a little bit more. But I mean, my mind would just go, what if there was a werewolf instead of a lunch lady? Am I still getting my lasagna surprise? You know what I mean? It's just the what ifs happen all the time. And so settling on one is really, people telling me, Kwame, we want to read that one idea you talked about. Or it's an idea that keeps popping up, right? So if you're a writer or a storyteller or a creative, and something keeps bugging you, it lingers in the back of your head or in the front of your mind, and you keep thinking about it, that could be a sign that this is what you were meant to work on. Sometimes we flash from one idea to the next, but if there's one that just keeps popping up, and it just lingers and stays with you, sticks with you, maybe you just need to just sit down and work on that.
I like that. I like when like writing advice can be simplified to a point where it's like, yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go with that. I want to talk about the magic in this book because there's a lot of magic, and I want to talk about the magic system here in a second. But I want to start with just the concept of magic school. Like, just there are a lot of magic school books out there, so I'm curious what your process was with like, okay, how do I make this one different from what's out there, and how do I make this so that it stands out?
Yeah, You know what, I treated it like, I'm not sure, what different schools around the world might call this. But we'll just go to like advanced courses, right? Not everyone learns at the same pace. Not everyone is learning or even interested in the same thing. We might have different tracks, STEM track, art tracks, music tracks, what have you, dance tracks. My oldest daughter, she has a day where it's all of her classes primarily are dance. That's her B day, and her A day is more traditional, ELA and math and science and so on and so forth. Um, Someone else might have an engineering course or a robotics course or so forth. What about a magic course? I really like the idea of a school that isn't exclusive to people who can wield magic, but it's inclusive for people who can wield magic. It's just another track for them. Now, you might not know that your classmate in I think one of Jax's he calls it math for haters. Maybe one of your classmates in math for haters um is a STEM or a robotics, or maybe they have intro to summoning. We don't know. But I like the idea of a school that invites everyone in. It isn't exclusive, and it's more about helping you learn and giving the tools for what you need. Um, on a day-to-day basis. And so for me, the magic in the school it was really important for it to be open and welcoming. And also just, really like there's band kids, drumming on the cafeteria and at lunchtime. There's theater kids, drama kids, and then there's your summoning kids.
I love that. You make it sound so like this is just a part of life, which is what it feels like when you're reading it. And then I want to talk about the magic system too, because like I find creating a magic system to be one of the most admiring feats of creativity because it's something that I just can't wrap my head around. So I want to ask you what it was like. Like you have a really cool magic system here based in heirlooms and ancestors. Like what was the process like creating a unique magic system that was unique to this story universe?
Well, I wanted something that could be personal for the readers, right? And so it's this idea that your ancestor have something passed down that is very special for your family. Maybe you're a musical family, maybe you're an artistic family, maybe you have memories of standing around the stove as your mother or your grandmother or your uncle makes their famous barbecue sauce or something, right? There's something very unique to you, whether it's the family you were born with or the family that you chose. There's something special that you all share, and so the ancestors pass down this concept of an heirloom, right? And I think one of my favorite characters in the book, his name is Toussaint, um, and he um, describes it. He uses the analogy of a flashlight, right? Like the the heirloom is the actual flashlight, right? The power from your ancestors are the batteries, and what you summon forth is that cone of light, right? And so all those things work together um to provide you with the ability to summon. You need the heirloom to channel the power to produce whatever it is you're summoning, whatever your talent may be.
And how did you like at what point in the story process were you developing this magic? Like did it come to you naturally, this magic system where it just felt like this is how it's gonna be? Or were you like out there like drafting, well, this is like the mechanics of the magic system?
We went through a couple of iterations. It felt very convoluted at first, but that's the power of editing and revision, right? Is figuring out, okay, well, let's just make it fun. How can we make this fun? And sometimes fun is simple. Simple is fun. And so, we eliminated some steps, we eliminated some routines and some incantations and some chalk diagrams. And we just were like, let's just make it so that you can, you steeple your fingers and you summon your heirloom and your power appears, right? And it was, I always tell people, don't look at the final product and think, oh, this author had it all together. No, no. I wish there was like a blooper reel of, the writing process, because you would see me just like literally rolling around on the floor ending up face down, like this isn't working, this isn't making sense.
Were there any like aha moments for Magic or otherwise when you were drafting this for like, oh my gosh, like this was like the breakthrough moment that sort of cued a major breakthrough in the writing process?
Um, my there were a lot of little moments like that, really like daisy chained together. So my writing process is terrible. I throw things at the wall and see what sticks. I'm a pantser, at heart. I plot because I need to, so that my editors and the publishing industry knows that I kind of know what I'm doing. But I'm a pantser at heart, right? And so sometimes, I'll be in chapter 12 and I'm like, you know what? It would make more sense if instead of this choice he made in chapter 3, he did this other choice. And I just continue writing as if he made that choice, which means in the revision process, I got to go back and make sure everything lines up. I liken it to if you've ever been at a restaurant and you get the little mazes on the back of the kids menu and you start just trying to do the little maze. Um, you might run into a dead end and you got to backtrack, and then you got to run into another dead end and you backtrack. Eventually, you make it to the end. Editing or revision is going back and erasing those places where you had to backtrack to make it look like you knew what you were doing all the way through, right? And so it's there were a lot of aha moments. I think the a lot of the gray line description and world building, the Gandhi dancers, I think that was a very big aha moment. And it happens in each one of my books where I'm doing research as I'm writing and I'm like, this is perfect. Like this fits in. So I think I didn't intend on the Gandhi dancers being in there. I learned about the Gandhi dancers as I'm writing the book and I'm like, this makes all the sense in the world. Um, I'm doing research about the Chicago Defender and where it was, and I'm like, headlines, headlines as ways of communicating through magical communities. That makes all the sense in the world because on these trains, a lot of porters, African American porters would carry these newspaper written by African Americans, like the Defender, to different communities, and so it was a great way to kind of like connect the dots. And again, this is all because you are not really stuck in there's one way to write this book. You're open to change. Even if you are an outliner, you are open to like, you know what? This serves the story better than what I had currently planned. Let's adapt, let's revise, and let's make this the best story possible.
Hearing you talk about the process of writing as a pantser, I feel that's exactly my process. So I'm so glad that other people do it. I want to talk about sense of place in this book, 'cause I think, setting is so hard, I feel like to convey, but when you do it right, it just hits. And you
Mhm.
have two wonderful settings here, the castle where Jax lives and the school. They're both so clearly defined. And I'm wondering like, were these places that you like sketched out, you wrote like, or did you find them along the way as well? What was your sort of discovery process for creating these two places?
So so the Freeman house, it's like this. It sounds like a castle. It's a I forget what the architectural term is called, and I need to do my research on that. But I distinctly remember um on my way to my I don't know what grade I was in. I was in elementary school, maybe fifth grade, maybe fourth or fifth grade. And my parents were driving me to school. And I remember they would keep driving by this one home. And it's this giant, it's got, the turrets, the towers. And it looks like a castle and it's huge. And we're a family of six, and we're all, crammed up on each other. And we're looking at this home. And I remember, them thinking like, we could, I wonder if we could, what's the sale price? What we could move into here. And I distinctly have that home in my mind as I'm thinking of Jax, because I'm like, I don't want to move. It's just, I don't want to move to a new house. I like my house. I like my room. My books are in my room. I know where all the secret storage spots are in here. I know which step creaks when I'm trying to sneak down for a cookie. I don't want to learn new step creaks. That's, who wants to adjust? Which is a feeling that Jax has as he moves into this new home in chapter one. And so, yeah, I'm doing research into these older style homes. Jax lives in that turret, what a turret looks like. Um, and same with DeSable, the school. It is a combination of schools that I have attended, the long hallways, the, kind of like the abandoned lockers in the basements that we don't use anymore, the creepy entrance to like the boiler room, like all of these little different features. And I think that's what really makes the setting, right? It's not some broad description, it's the details, right? It's what firmly grounds the reader into the world that you're presenting. So they may they may remember, the water bubbler, right? And how, it never worked, or how you had to press it halfway down, because if you pressed it all the way down, it would rocket out and your outfit was ruined. Um, so it's the, the feel. This is personal. The feeling of trying to slide into, the picnic style lunch benches and ramming your knee into one of those poles, and it just ruins your day. The next 10 minutes of your life are absolutely you battling back tears because that hurts, and so like grounding readers into those details and what is really what cements setting for them. And you don't have to do a whole bunch, right? Just little touch points to remind them that they're grounded in this setting. And then their mind does the rest. They fill in the blanks of the schools they may have attended, or their homes that they may have grown up in their neighborhoods. And so it's really just providing those little reminders that, hey, you're here, and then letting their brain do the work.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, because I remember this is like one of the original points where I latched onto this story was when Jax sees his room in the turret for the first time, and just his way of seeing the room. Like I felt like I was there with him, and I was like, "This is such a cool space." And then the detail that got me was the stairwell that goes to nothing, just kind of
Mm-hmm.
goes up and dead ends. And I'm like you said, like that allows the reader to just think, like, what is this thing? And it's just like this little point of tension that just so well done. Just me gushing, but just wanted to say that was an excellent an excellent authentic detail. And I want to talk about Jax a bit more. Again, I was mentioning it to you before we started recording. Like his narrative voice is just so strong. So I want to just ask more like generic. How did you find his voice? How did you? Was it a natural thing for you? Did you, especially having built Tristan Strong, who has a very unique voice himself? How did you create Jax to be original, to be unique, to be such a great narrator?
um this is going to sound really weird, right? But I think everyone has their own unique way of complaining. Everyone has their own complaint voice. Some of it may be a little whiny. Some of us may be more reserved and silent, but we can't let go of this one particular thing, even if the conversation has advanced. All of us have a very unique way of complaining. And so for me, we start off with, we start the whole book off with Jax doesn't like what's happening, you know? Um, and you could say that it's very similar to, I mean, all of my books. You can kind of see that all of our the characters start off with a problem. They don't like the situation that they're in. Tristan, it's, he's being sent off to his grandparents. Jax is in Chicago, um, not dressed for the weather, for the winter weather, and he's lost his suitcases. And so, like, how we choose to complain, I think, very quickly sets up the voice of a particular character. So, like me, um, I am going to if I have an issue with something, it's going to take me a minute to like build up to it. I'm just going to be very quiet and stoic and silent, lots of grunts and uhs and murmurs, and then 2 days later, I'm be like, you remember that one time you said something? I just I didn't like in it, and it's going to be a week later, right? Jax is he's very in the moment. He's like, all right, I got to be tough. I got to be strong. It's cold. it's very, very cold. I don't have my suitcases. I don't have my good charger. My phone's about to die. Um, I'm hungry, like all of these different issues. And so that's where I really start with finding a character voice, like finding out what's wrong and how what they choose to do about it, and then moving on from there. Jax is when I think of Jax is a cross between I'm trying to think of the he's just a big friendly guy, right? And so I think of even though he's an adult now, I think of young Keenan now on Saturday Night Live and everything. I think of a young Keenan, and this is going to sound weird, but Chien Po from Mulan, the big character from Mulan. They're just happy, friendly, lovable guys, but they're bigger, which sets up the other tension and conflict in the story, which is Jax's size. You know, not just his weight, but also he's big. When I think of Jax is an offensive lineman. You know, that's what he wants to do. That's what he enjoys, playing an offensive lineman on a football team. So he's a big guy, but he's a big friendly guy. And so that also plays into it as Jax moves through this world of um he's conscious of his size, he's conscious of the space that he takes up, and he's learning how not to shrink himself, and so gradually growing confidence as we move throughout the book.
Mhm. Such an important theme. And there was another detail about Jax that I found particularly compelling, which was that he is both connected to football and to theater, which I thought was so cool because so often in kids' books we get one or the other, or we get one like transitioning into the other, but
Mm-hmm.
he is both, which I found to be so refreshing. Was that, I mean, it doesn't play like the biggest role in the story, but it was still a detail that I latched onto right away. Was that an important detail for you to get into his character?
It is a reminder, I think, both to me and to readers and to everyone else out there, that you're not, segmented.
Mm.
Like, you're not a compartmentalized person. You enjoy multiple things, you know? Some of my favorite things to do as I'm just like browsing social media is when a social media post has like the Venn diagram of my interests. And it's like there's like seven people in the world who might understand, but it's perfect for me. And it reminds me that we are multitudes within ourselves, right? Jax likes football and he likes, theater. He loves meatball subs, and he enjoys uh the pecans from Miss Ella, right? Like, he enjoys so many different things, and it's a reminder to us that you are not just the one thing that maybe everyone else sees or is or you are presented as, right? Like, um you can be this big, outwardly tough, strong, stoic person and enjoy the softer things of life, right? You can be silent and also be one of the funniest kids out there, right? You can get all the A's in math that you want because you're a very good math student, and your favorite subject could be carpentry, that you took one time by a substitute teacher. So it's just, yeah, the theater and football is just a reminder that you can be all things at once. You don't have to limit yourself to one.
Mm. I love that. I'm glad you brought up the nuts for Miss Ella because I literally every time he called them laxative nuts, I lost my mind. Like that just they got me every time. Which is the perfect segue to ask my next question, which is what I mean, especially with theme, but you know, in kids' books, it's hard to, navigate theme without sounding preachy, without telling kids how to think, how to feel. How did you approach theme? Were you actively engaging with it, or did it just kind of come along naturally?
it's it's tough, man. It's one of those things that, again, I'm glad that I tell writers all the time, young, old, aspiring, um, fall in love with revision. Like, make the revision process your favorite part, because that's how you really polish and create this deep and meaningful story, right? Because it might be on your third pass through that you find a connection that you hadn't seen before that you want to highlight and make memorable for the readers. So for me, like I sort of have like these pillars of what a story is about in my mind. Like, is it it's about where we choose to fit in. It's about um we are not our story hasn't, isn't written by anyone else. Like, we can control our own story. Um and so it's I have these ideas of the theme or like the major point of the story. And then it's like I feel like it's my subconscious that is really helping, right? So like I'm like, all right, I have these ideas, and then I'm writing them like, oh, we can connect this in here, and we can re-emphasize the theme here, or we can re-emphasize it in this way. It's great when you have multiple characters in a book because then you can show multiple examples of a theme or of this point that you're trying to drive home, right? Like, um, we make our own futures, right? Or we are not who likes us or who approves of us. I think, I love the relationship between Devin and Nina, and then their relationship to their own grandfather, and how it's different, and how on the outset it looks one way, and then we learn that it's a different, there's an entirely different reason why they may be treated differently. um and then that's completely different to how Jax is treated differently. And so it's all about how, we can really, like you said, you don't want to preach, you don't want to lecture, you don't want to make, beat your readers over the head with this is a good point, this is a good point, here's the point, here's the message. It's all about embedding it within the story. And so I the way that I like to frame it is that if we can show our characters receiving the message gradually, a lot of time that's what leads the readers to it as well. Since they are following this character and their point of view, maybe they get to it sooner, maybe they don't get to it at all. But if we have the character experience it, a lot of times that's what will give that readers that signal as well.
Mm, I love that. So before we move on from Jax, which it comes out October 24th, I believe, just over a month away. Uh,
October 1st.
First, okay, I stand corrected, which is even better. So you'll be able to get this even sooner.
Yes.
So I might be jumping the gun here, but I did read in another interview that there's a sequel to it, and I'm curious if you can tell us what's coming for Jax.
There's a sequel, and I'm working on a third book in the Jax series. It'll be a trilogy. Um, and so what I will say about the sequel without giving any spoilers is I love cryptids. I love cryptids. And when you read book one, you'll find that there is a very special cryptid in book one. And when you get to book two, we explore that even more so. I would just say one of my favorite parts of book one, and this actually was one of those things I thought about at the very outset of, coming up with Jax Freeman, and that is that there being something special and magical inside of Shed Aquarium in Chicago. That I had that idea pretty much right as soon as I came up with the magical train idea, and knowing that it was going to be set in Chicago, I was like, I want something magical to transpire, to happen inside of Shed Aquarium. And so I was very, very excited about that. And we learn about that in book one, and we explore even more about why that place is in Shed Aquarium in book two.
Hmm. You had me at cryptids. There was a period of my life where I was genuinely looking for degree programs in cryptozoology, which turns out doesn't exist, but I was optimistic.
You know
So
what? And it should.
it
It
should.
should.
We all need to study those Bigfoots more. All right, so let's talk about Freedom Fire, the imprint that is now it's fully operational. You're pumping out books over there. So what was the idea behind Freedom Fire, and why? How did it come to be at Disney?
So if you follow me at all on social media, one thing that I love to shout about is I love to shout about books. I love talking about books. my favorite books and what have you. And I love shouting about books by Black authors, just because I know that the more we can celebrate and highlight them, the more people will read them, which is, very important about any, marginalized story or storyteller. And so I would shout about books on social media. And then I remember there was a book that came out, and I was very upset that no one told me about it. It was I think it's called The Conductors, and it came out. It's a fantasy, historical fantasy that takes place during the Reconstruction era in Philadelphia. And I'm like, this is right up my alley. Why is no one telling me about this, right? And I'm like, all right, if no one is telling me about books by Black authors, no one is telling a lot of people about books by Black authors. So I started a newsletter, Black by Popular Demand. And from there, I was like, well, what's the next step beyond shouting about them? And it's trying to get them out there. It's trying to get them published. And so I'd known for some time that I wanted to investigate. I thought it would come, decades down the line of like starting a little independent publishing house and, putting out one or two books a year, maybe. Um, and I remember, talking to my editor, Steph Lurie, who, worked on a lot of the, Rick Riordan books, the Percy Jackson books. And I remember talking to her, I was like, how do you become an editor? How do you, do this? And we had a chat. And so they'd known that I had some interest in that. And it was really just like finding the right time and the right avenue. And, Rick was like, this is a great idea. And Steph and Disney, they're like, this is a great idea. And I'm like, well, if you guys are sure that you want me doing it. And so it's really just an escalation of what I feel like is the Kwame Mbalia mission statement, which is to celebrate stories, to celebrate storytelling, and to support the Black diaspora authors, so Black authors from around the globe who are trying to do that.
That's awesome. Yeah, whenever the release came out that this was going to be a thing in the three titles, I was like, "Oh, like this is good stuff." So let's talk about the first one that came out in August, which was Moko Magic by Tracy Baptiste of the Jumbies, which is like one of my all-time favorite series. Why was this the right book to kick off Freedom Fire?
Well, because it takes Carnival in Brooklyn, takes place in Tracy's neighborhood around that time, and it seemed like Carnival is a celebration. It is a magical celebration. It is joyful. There's delicious food, music and dance. There's delicious food. And so having Tracy lead us off with that celebration, it just felt right. It made sense, right? Freedom, like I'm wearing the shirt. Freedom Fire is at its central core about joy. It is Black joy, and Carnival is one of the most beautiful times around the world, specifically at this celebration, that you can see that, experience it, and just really be in tune with how magical storytelling really is. Tracy is wonderful. She's incredible. I love the Jumbies. I remember reading the Jumbies as I'm working on Tristan. Like it is, she is an incredible storyteller and an incredible person as well. And so having her lead us off, I think really epitomized what Freedom Fire is about, and in those three pillars that we build the imprint around, which is Black joy, Black storytelling, and Black resilience. Tracy is all three.
You more or less already answered this, but I want to ask anyway. So it's still very early in Freedom Fire's, existence, but what are you most excited for? Where do you want to see it go from here?
Um, I want to see. I can't wait to see the catalog grow and like the really um diverse wealth of storytelling that will show up. Um, yeah, and I think nothing symbolizes that more than the book that comes out after mine, which is Black Girl Power, right? It's an anthology of short stories by authors who are uh amazing in their own right. Like one thing I love this is me stepping onto my short story and anthology soapbox, right? One thing as a reader that I love about anthology collections is that one, you get these brief glimpses into wondrous worlds and storytelling minds, right? But then if you like the story, you look up the author and you're like, well, I wonder what else they've done, right? So you might read Danielle Clayton's story and then discover she has her own magic school series, right? Called The Marvelers. You might read A. Marie's story and you're like, I wonder what A. Marie has done, and find out her, incredible backlog of not only music, but her storytelling. And so it's like, you read this anthology, you're inspired by the stories within, and then you're like, you've got 15 authors that you can now go off and explore. It's like it's uh the Wikipedia deep dive of storytelling. You're just from instead of article to article, you're going from author to author and finding their catalog. So Leah, who put the anthology together, did a fantastic job. In fact, I just received word that it's received its third starred review. So I'm more excited about the books that are coming out on the imprint than my own, which is, I don't know. I want everybody to do well. I want all of these stories out there. I want people to have the ability to select and find and choose their new favorites from the Freedom Fire catalog. I think that's what excites me the most, knowing that people will be able to have a Freedom Fire shelf the way that when I was growing up, I could go outside and find a bookshelf because my parents stocked our bookshelves with authors and stories that look like me, and now people will be able to do that with Freedom Fire. And I will, one of my favorite analogies to say is that yes, we are celebrating Black storytelling, but that doesn't mean it's only for Black readers, right? Are we hoping that a Black reader will find these books and find themselves within it? Absolutely. However, you've been to a birthday party before that wasn't your own and had a blast. There was cake, maybe party games, maybe you walked away with a goodie bag. Maybe it was at Chuck E. Cheese. I don't know. You had fun and it wasn't about you. And that's what Freedom Fire is. You're going to have fun with these stories.
I love a good analogy, and that one just that did it. That was like everything. That's just such a great way to put it. And it's a great note to end on. So before we do end, though, I want to throw it out. Is there's anything else that you want to mention or throw out there before we wrap up? Go for it. Is there anything else that you want to say?
Um, Mogul Magic is already out there by Tracy Batiste. My book, Jax Freeman and the Phantom Shriek, comes out on October 1st. Leah's Black Girl Power comes out on November 12th, I believe. Um, and we just announced GO2's Kaya Morgan book, which comes out in April of next year. I am so excited about our launch list and the books that are coming out and the authors that we have signed up that haven't been announced yet. So if you love books, if you love reading, get out there, buy a Freedom Fire book, buy a different book. Just get out there, support books, support your bookstores, support your libraries, and enjoy reading.
Couldn't have said it better. That was excellent. Kwame, thank you so much for being here and taking the time to do this today. I really appreciate you doing this.
Thanks, Josh, and thank you, Barnes & Noble, for having me. I can't wait to go there and, yes, buy my book, but also spend a fortune buying more book stacks.
It's a good fortune to spend. All right. Thank you all for being here. And Kwame, again, thank you very much.
Thank you.